Palace of Versailles had once been the glittering symbol of France's absolute monarchy, where kings ruled with divine authority and courtiers bowed before the splendor of the crown. But by the late 18th century, that glitter had begun to tarnish. The reign of Louis XVI, which began with cautious hope, would spiral into chaos, betrayal, and ultimately tragedy. In Part 1, we explored the early life of Louis XVI, a shy, uncertain prince who unexpectedly became king, his marriage to Marie Antoinette, and his struggle to balance reform with tradition. Now, in Part 2, the story darkens. For Louis, the revolution was not just a storm outside the palace gates. It was a force that consumed his crown, his family, and his very life. From the storming of the Bastille to the humiliating failure of the flight to Varennes, from the collapse of the monarchy to his final moments on the guillotine. This is the story of the last king of France, a man too hesitant to save his throne and too human to escape his fate. Join us as we uncover the dramatic final chapter in the life of Louis XVI, a journey from royal majesty to the executioner's blade. By 1789, the Kingdom of France was trembling under the weight of financial ruin, food shortages, and social unrest. Bread, the staple of the French diet, was scarce and costly. Families starved while the nobility feasted. Whispers of reform had turned into cries of revolution, and on July 14th, the storming of the Bastille shook the very foundations of monarchy. The people no longer feared the king. They feared hunger, poverty, and injustice more. Louis XVI, sitting in Versailles, was paralyzed. He was not cruel, not despotic by nature, but he was indecisive. He listened to advisors, debated endlessly, and delayed decisions until it was often too late. In the eyes of the revolutionaries, he became the symbol of everything wrong with France, a monarch who neither embraced reform fully nor resisted it with strength. The October days soon followed. An angry crowd, many of them women demanding bread for their children, marched from Paris to Versailles. They stormed the palace, killing guards, screaming for the queen's blood. Marie Antoinette barely escaped the mob, standing defiantly on the balcony while insults and musket balls threatened her life. At dawn, the royal family was forced to abandon Versailles, taken to Paris as prisoners in all but name. The Sun King's palace was left behind, and with it, the illusion of absolute monarchy. Inside the Tuileries Palace, Louis XVI and his family lived under constant watch. The National Assembly stripped away his powers, drafting a constitution that reduced the king to a figurehead. The once absolute monarch was now a king in chains, his every move scrutinized. Louis struggled. He wanted reform, but not at the expense of his crown. He wanted peace, but he could not abandon the nobility. And as France grew more radical, his indecision became fatal. Revolutionary leaders like Robespierre and Marat painted him as a traitor, a man who secretly plotted with foreign monarchs to crush the revolution. Trust between king and people shattered. In 1791, the royal family made a desperate gamble. They would flee Paris, escape to the loyalist stronghold of Normandy, and rally support to restore the monarchy. Disguised as servants, Louis, Marie Antoinette, and their children slipped into the night. For a brief moment, freedom seemed within reach, but Louis could not shed his royal bearing. He was recognized by a local postmaster in the town of Varennes, betrayed by his own hesitation. Dragged back to Paris in disgrace, the king had revealed himself to be a prisoner who sought escape, a monarch who no longer trusted his people. The flight to Varennes destroyed whatever credibility Louis still held. The French no longer saw him as a reluctant reformer, they saw him as a traitor. Revolutionary newspapers depicted him as a coward, a man who would rather flee to foreign armies than stand with his people. The monarchy, already fragile, began to crumble. In 1792, France declared war on Austria and Prussia. The revolutionaries believed foreign monarchs were plotting to restore Louis to full power, and so France struck first. But war only fueled chaos. Paranoia gripped Paris, and revolution turned bloody. In August, the Tuileries was stormed by armed crowds, slaughtering the king's Swiss guards. The royal family was imprisoned in the temple, fortress that became their final home. By September, France was drowning in blood. Mobs butchered thousands of suspected royalists in the prisons, fearing conspiracies against the revolution. The monarchy was formally abolished. Louis was no longer king of France and Navarre, nor even king of the French. He was simply Louis Capet, a man stripped of title and dignity. The National Convention, now ruling France, decided his fate. He would stand trial for treason. The charges were grave: conspiring against liberty, colluding with foreign enemies, and betraying the nation. In December 1792, Louis was brought before the convention. Calm, dignified, he denied the charges. "I forgive those who accuse me, and I pray that France will avoid the misfortunes that threaten her." The debates raged. Some deputies argued for imprisonment, others for exile, but the radicals demanded blood. To them, France could not be free while the shadow of monarchy remained. The vote was called. By a narrow majority, Louis XVI was sentenced to death. On January 21st, 1793, Paris awoke to a cold, gray morning. The king was taken from the temple, dressed in white. He bid farewell to his family with heartbreaking calm, embracing his children for the last time. Then he was placed in a carriage and escorted by drums and armed guards to the Place de la Révolution. Tens of thousands of citizens gathered in silence. Mounting the scaffold, Louis XVI tried to speak. "I die innocent of all the crimes laid to my charge. I forgive my enemies. I pray that my blood may be useful to the French." His words were drowned out by the beat of drums. At 10:22 a.m., the guillotine's blade fell. The crowd gasped, some in horror, others in cheers. The head of the king was held aloft. The monarchy ended in a single stroke. Across Europe, kings and queens trembled. If France could execute its monarch, no throne was safe. The revolution had devoured its king, and with his death, an era of blood and radicalism truly began. Louis XVI's life was a tragedy of hesitation. He was not the tyrant his enemies painted, nor the reformer his allies hoped for. He was a man caught between two worlds, the old order of monarchy and the new vision of liberty. His kindness made him cautious, his indecision made him weak, and in a time of revolution, weakness was fatal. His death did not end the revolution. Instead, it fueled it. In the years that followed, France would be torn apart by terror, dictatorship, and war. Yet the execution of Louis XVI marked a turning point not just for France but for the world. It showed that kings were not untouchable, that the people could defy the crown, that even the mightiest throne could fall. Louis XVI's legacy is complex. To some, he was a martyr, a good man destroyed by forces beyond his control. To others, he was the symbol of monarchy's failure, a king who could not adapt to the tide of history. But whatever judgment history passes, his story remains one of the most dramatic in the annals of Europe. From the golden halls of Versailles to the shadow of the guillotine, the journey of Louis XVI reminds us that power is fragile, that history spares no one, and that the fate of kings can change in the blink of an eye. This is a complete narration. Ready. Script for Part 2. Would you like me to now create a list of 8 related images like we did for Part 1? That match this script, so you can use them in your video visuals.